In a wild field in southern Africa, there lived a pair of lions, a male and a female, who had ruled their territory for many years. They hunted together, patrolled together, and roamed the plains with the quiet authority of those born free. The grass once grew thick, and herds of zebra, wildebeest, and antelope had filled the horizon. But as the seasons turned, the land grew harsher. The rivers thinned into cracked soil, the pools of water shrank, and the once rich grass turned brittle. Each season grew leaner than the last, and prey became scarce. The lions soon faced a choice. To remain in their ancestral range was to risk slow starvation. And so, side by side, they chose to leave, setting out across unknown country in search of a place where they might endure. The journey stretched on for hundreds of kilometers. Day after day, the pair pushed forward through vast plains, dust rising beneath their tired paws. Hunger clawed at their bellies. At times they survived on little more than hares or birds, meager catches compared to the antelope and buffalo they once brought down. Predators trailed them as shadows. Hyenas cackled at night, jackals skirted their path, and the scent of strange lions warned them of danger at every boundary they crossed. Yet still, they pressed on. At night the rhythm never changed. Beneath the stars, the male stood guard, his mane catching the moonlight as he watched the horizon. His roar cut through the silence, a warning to rivals and scavengers alike. The lioness curled in the grass, conserving what strength she could. Then, at dawn, they rose and began again. Weeks blurred into one another, until at last, a new scent carried on the wind: water, antelope, and life. That path led them into Mikado National Park, one of South Africa's great reserves. Here, the land rolled in long waves of grass, dotted with acacia trees and teeming with herds. Birds wheeled overhead. Antelope grazed in clusters. After endless weeks of struggle, the pair had reached a place of promise. Cautiously, they entered. They lowered their heads to sniff the soil, testing for safety. But Mikado was different from the lands they had known. Patrol trucks moved across the tracks, fences gleamed in the sun, and guard posts overlooked the plains. None of this carried meaning for the lions. They knew only that the land was alive, and they stayed hidden in the tall grass, cautious of every sound. Within the reserve, two members of staff soon began to notice their presence. Sifo, a veteran patrol driver, spent his days traversing the savannah to check on animal health. Namsa, a skilled wildlife observer, filled notebook after notebook with careful records. One morning, beside the central river, they spotted fresh lion tracks pressed deep into the damp soil. These prints were broad, heavy, and unfamiliar. A new pair had arrived. The two decided to keep watch from a distance. The lions were strangers to Mikado, and their adjustment would decide much: peace or conflict, survival or loss. In those first nights, the male roared repeatedly, announcing his claim to this new land. The sound rolled across the park like distant thunder. The lioness, by contrast, paced constantly, circling restlessly as though unsettled by the unfamiliar terrain. But despite their exhaustion, the pair showed resilience. Within days they had hunted an antelope, later a hare. Slowly, their strength returned. It was during these early weeks that Namsa noticed something unusual. The lioness's stride shortened. She moved more slowly, and her belly seemed heavier. Namsa suspected pregnancy. Sifo agreed, remarking on how attentively the male now stayed at her side, guarding her movements. If true, it was good news. A cub born to new blood would bring strength to the reserved. As months passed, the signs grew unmistakable. The lioness's belly swelled, her gait grew heavier, and she rested more often in the shade of acacia thickets. Sifo began carrying medical supplies in his vehicle: fluids, injections, basic tools, should any emergency arise. Namsa kept detailed notes: hours of rest, feeding habits, even the subtle changes in the male's demeanor. Across Mikado, staff began to hope that this family's story might soon bring new life to the reserve. But when the day of birth came, it brought trouble. The lioness entered labor, yet the birth did not progress. Hours passed, then a full day, then another. Her body strained in painful waves, her groans echoing across the grassland. She rolled onto her sides, clawed at the earth, and lay exhausted between contractions. The male prowled ceaselessly nearby, roaring in frustration and circling the thicket, powerless to ease her struggle. Sifo and Namsa watched with growing alarm. If the birth did not succeed soon, the lioness might die, and the cub along with her. But intervention was risky. Sedating her could kill both mother and offspring. Sedating the male could send the lioness fleeing in panic, endangering them both. Every option carried danger. At last, they made their choice. They drove the truck closer, its engine rumbling low across the plain. At once the male noticed. His head lifted, eyes blazing, and his roar split the air. His mane bristled as he stepped forward, tail lashing. He stood tall, barring their way. In the grass, the lioness lay still, sides heaving in exhaustion. Namsa whispered, "If we wait longer, she may not survive." Sifo nodded and climbed out, keeping his gaze steady on the lions. Namsa followed, clutching the small medical kit. Man and lion now faced each other on the open plain. The male growled, a deep rumble of warning, but did not attack. Perhaps instinct told him these humans bore no threat. Namsa moved slowly, her voice low and steady. The lioness stirred but did not rise. Her eyes, clouded by exhaustion, seemed to soften. In that fragile moment, Namsa knelt, touched her swollen belly, and delivered an injection to aid the birth. Then she retreated, step by cautious step, until she reached Sifo again. They withdrew to the truck and waited. The hours dragged. Contractions grew stronger, more rhythmic. The lioness twisted in the dust, groaning. The male circled, torn between aggression and watchfulness. At last, after nearly 2 more hours, it happened. With a final heave, the lioness delivered her cub. The tiny creature fell into the grass, wet and trembling, its first cry a thin whistle against the wind. The male approached, lowering his head to lick the newborn clean. The lioness pulled her cub close, panting but alive. Her eyes glimmered as she cradled the small body against her chest. From the car, Sifo and Namsa watched in silence. Namsa raised her binoculars, scanning the cub's tiny frame. It appeared strong, breathing evenly. Later, when the family settled, she administered a tonic to the mother to restore her strength. The male looked toward them once, eyes fixed and steady. Then he turned back, keeping guard over his mate and cub dead on the ground. The cub stirred weakly, then nestled into its mother's warmth. The lioness licked it rhythmically, her low rumble filling the quiet air. That evening, the rangers entered the details in their records and gave the lions names. The male they called Koda, a symbol of courage. The lioness they named Leia, a word for hope. And the cub they called Mosi, a new beginning. As the sun set, Sifo and Namsa drove back slowly, leaving the family in peace. Namsa brushed tears from her cheeks, while Sifo smiled and said this was a day he would never forget. News spread quickly. The reserve celebrated. A new life had been born, and against the odds, the family had survived. The next day, Sifo and Namsa found them again. Koda stood tall on a slope, his mane catching the morning light. Leia lay at his side, while little Mosi stumbled clumsily around her paws. This time, when the patrol truck appeared, Koda did not roar. Trust had begun to grow. Weeks passed, and Mosi grew stronger. He chased insects through the grass, clambered onto his father's back, and tugged playfully at his mother's tail. Koda roared at dusk, his voice rolling across the plains, declaring his claim. Leia guided her cub with patience, every movement marked by resilience. At dawn, the family often appeared against the horizon, bathed in golden light. Mosi nudged at Leia's face, while Koda stood sentinel, scanning the distance. When Sifo and Namsa passed by, the lions would lift their heads calmly before settling again. For the rangers, each sighting brought memories of the day they had stepped forward when life hung in the balance. The fragile cry of the newborn, the lioness's acceptance, the courage it had taken to intervene. The story of Koda, Leia, and Mosi spread throughout Mikado. It became a symbol of hope, proof of what conservation could achieve. Visitors and young trainees alike were inspired by the tale. Time moved on. Mosi grew taller, his legs stronger. He practiced stalking with his mother, crouching low in the grass, then pouncing clumsily on imagined prey. In the evenings, he joined his father in roaring, a smaller voice woven into Koda's thunderous call. The sound carried across the reserve, father and son together. Often, at sunset, the family rested in the open grass. Koda lay with his chin on his paws, eyes steady. Leia licked Mosi clean, while the cub nestled close, comforted by her warmth. From afar, Sifo and Namsa observed quietly. They knew the lions belonged to no one but themselves, yet an unspoken bond lingered. Each time their patrol car appeared, the family lifted their heads in calm recognition. Thanks to courage, patience, and care, a life had been saved, and a family had endured. And so, in the heart of Mikado, the story of Koda, Leia, and Mosi lived on. Dear friend, thank you for taking the time to follow the story.